Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
So, as Lauren mentioned, it's kind of snacky style day today. First of all, I wanted to ask, I have popsicles ready. Do you guys want to eat popsicles while you watch, or do you want to save them for the end? No pressure. No pressure. No pressure.
There's only 5 of you. You have to decide things.
Okay, let's do it. Let's have popsicles. So, the recipe that you have in front of you is super, super basic. But then in talking to Mike yesterday in the office, I got fancy last night. So I was like, I don't know, I think I want something kind of herby and spicy in addition to just the fruit. So these are strawberry basil popsicles with toasted fennel and Greek yogurt. So I'll talk more about the popsicles when we get there, but yeah, you should be able to drop those in some water, loosen them up a little bit. And I forgot to bring my toasted fennel, so the ones we're going to make today in front of you are the strawberry basil. But again, like all the other recipes, have fun, get wild. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about options for that when we get there. I'm going to get this Sun Gold jam going now, because it likes a little time to get jammy. So when I was thinking about snacks, I thought about doing snacks a few months ago, and all the things I was coming up with were things that require you to turn on the oven. And I thought, it's just too hot for that right now. We cannot be bothered to turn on the oven. The other thing that I really like to do, especially if just feeding myself, is make a meal out of stuff on toast. So stuff on toast to me can be breakfast, it can be lunch or dinner, it can be a snack, it can be a full meal, depending on how big your toast is. But usually I want something smeary on there, right? And then I want something producey on there, right? To make it stick. And so what we're going to do today is the ricotta cheese on, it's sort of inspired by pan con tomate. If you guys are familiar with that Spanish dish where they take toast and they rub garlic on it, and then they rub the tomato in that rough toast until it just sort of like a raw tomato, until those tomato juices just soak into that bread. Delish. So, Sun Gold tomato jam. Do you have to have Sun Gold tomatoes? Absolutely not. It will work with any kind of tomatoes. Do you have to have cherry tomatoes? No, you don't. I mean, it's essentially a sauce. Jam just sounds cute, right? We like to co-op words in other ways in the culinary world. Sometimes I come right in and I'm like, I got you, Evan, you're working. Oh, here we go.
Your first demo that we got locked out of it, turned around, and we
Yep.
didn't do it yet.
But we figured it out. We persevered. I'm not afraid to phone a friend if I have to. But, okay, so if I was making this, you guys saw me toasting all that bread earlier. That was in anticipation for a lot more people. But if I was just making this for myself or for my family at home, I would just toast the bread right in the pan, right? A little bit of olive oil. So again, you're not having to turn on and heat up the oven. I mean, you can put your toast in a toaster too. It's a fine way to make toast. Toaster oven, whatever works for you. So we're gonna get this heated up a little bit. I've got 1 clove of garlic here that I've already cut in half. And then I'm gonna take this other clove of garlic and we're just gonna slice it. Come through, pluck them out. You can wiggle them. Yeah. Awesome. Welcome. Come on in. We're just getting started with a tomato jam. All right, there we go. So I'm just going to give this some slices, thin little slices. You can mince it up as much or as little as you like. I kind of like a sort of rustic, big, chunky garlic situation for this. All right, and then I'm just going to toast my bread in there a little bit. And while we're getting ready, eventually we're going to throw 10 or 12 basil leaves in here. So I'm going to go ahead and pluck all those and get them ready. I can't remember if it was New York Times or Epicurious that did a whole stuff on toast, sort of how to think about it, how to do it. But I don't think you can think that hard about it, right? I do like, usually I'm choosing something as my sort of like glue to stick the stuff to the toast, whatever smeary thing. It's a nut butter, it's a ricotta cheese, it's a hummus. It's something that's going to have some fat and have some protein in it so that food really, whatever I'm making sticks with me. Your goal for all of your meals, I'm going to put my dietitian hat on now, is that every single one of your meals, you want to have all of your macronutrients. You want to have a little bit of carbohydrate and fat and protein and fiber, right? If you can get a little bit of all of those things, then the fat's there. It's going to help keep you full a little bit longer. It's also going to help you absorb those fat-soluble vitamins, right? I think we think over time and in generations of diet culture in America, we've vilified fat at one point, we've vilified carbohydrates at another point, and we've pumped up protein. And protein is important, right? I don't want to underemphasize that, especially for folks who are dealing with active treatment and illness. We certainly care a lot about your protein needs, but we can sometimes get a little overexcited about only caring about protein and vilifying fat and carbohydrates. And they're all really, really important. Because the carbohydrate is the most efficient way to give you some energy, right? The fiber is going to make sure that carbohydrate doesn't get absorbed into your bloodstream too fast, right? So it's going to regulate your blood sugar a little bit better. So you need them all. You need them all there. They're all good. They all have a purpose. So when I'm planning my stuff on toast, right, I've got my carbohydrate in my toast. And I've got something with some fat and some protein that I'm smearing on it, right? And then I've got my fiber and my deliciousness in whatever produce sort of thing that I'm putting on top. So I've got these two toasty bread things, right? We're going to let that cool just a little bit before I handle it. And then we're going to add a little bit, real hot. We're going to add a little bit more olive oil and then some garlic to the pan. This is our sliced garlic. So we don't want this garlic to get real dark. We're going to keep an eye on it. Right away, because the pan's hot enough, you can start to smell the garlic. You can start to see it change colors a little bit on the edge, and that's as far as we want, right? Just give it a little bit of head start and flavor the oil. And then we're going to throw in a little bit of coriander. I might have to go the slow route. Coriander actually is kind of a subtle spice in a lot of dishes. Pop it off there. Oh my gosh, the whole thing pops right off. I don't have off the top of my head like the big main things that it's for. It's anti-inflammatory, but it's real tasty, so that's why I like it. And we just want to let it get a little bit aromatic. And then we're going to dump these tomatoes in. All I did was pluck the little tops off of them. I think the recipe says 2, and this was 2 that were overflowing, so I broke them into 3. And
this was my dinner last night.
yes, exactly. So now we want to crank this heat up because we want to bust these things open. So we're going to get the heat cranked up real high, and once these start to split open and the juices start flowing, even just putting them in there, that's already cooled down the oil a good bit so that our garlic doesn't burn. We just put all this room temperature juicy stuff in there, so we want to stop our garlic and our coriander from its toasting process, and we're just going to let those hang out for a little bit. Now in a little bit I'll start poking at them, smashing them down. Coriander is the container. Okay, there we go. All right, so, oh, you can hear them, right? They're already starting to bust open because that heat's cranked up. That's every one of those little guys just surrendering. It's garlic. Garlic, garlic, garlic. All right, so we minced up some of our garlic. The other one I saved back a little bit, and I'm just going to give it a little rub on the toast. Can I convince you to rub toast over there? It doesn't. You can overpower it real easily. It just needs a little couple swipes on each piece, and then you can start prepping up your plate with all of this toasted bread. All right, look at that. We're getting excited in here. I'm just going to get a little blistered in here. We like that. That little toasty, blistery stuff is going to just add more flavor. Me, because I'm impatient, I'm already wanting to sort of start to smash some of them. You do want to get some of that juice out of there so that we make sure our garlic isn't enough juice that it doesn't burn. All right, at this point we're also going to give it some salt and pepper. And then, gosh, that smells good. So exciting. And you can really cook this down as long as you have patience and as long as your appetite is not, you're not starving, but you can really, it can go as fast as only maybe 10 or 15 minutes if you want. This over here probably has 45 minutes on it before I got here. And this whole container, this is 6 pints of tomato cooked down for that. So this looks like a lot right now, but it's gonna cook down a good bit. And every now and then I'll just give it a little smash. You are rubbing garlic. That's your assignment. Good job. Yeah. That's exactly what your assignment is. Yeah. All right. Hold, please. I forgot to. We're gonna swap these for a minute. These Vitamix has the longer cord. Go here. You come here. It's going to be a loud one, too. I don't know if you're going to have to do some post-production sound work for me. Between the sizzle over there and the appliances over here. All right, so one thing you could use as a delicious, filling, protein, fat smear thing on toast is nut pate. This is what we're going to make right now. This is so simple because you're really just dumping everything in the food processor. I might need to rearrange some of this real quick. It's like, yeah, Lauren set it up right there. I'll try not to
double coat kind of.
There's plenty, y'all. There's plenty.
Double coat.
Do it up. This is a meal. My first thought was popsicles, and then I was like, we gotta make a full meal out of this, and I don't think we can get a meal out of popsicles. All right, so I'm just coming over and giving this a little smash. It is 1 clove of garlic. I peeled it and I cut it in half. Yep. So because it's raw, I've overdone it on the bread before. I got real excited. And it just, yeah, it needs a few little swipes. Oh, I got you, girl. I got you. Right, there is a lot of toast going on over there. Yeah, and you'll just start to like rub, if you're doing enough of it, rub the garlic down into nothing. Slides right on.
Yeah, I thought work a little.
Nope, no work. Okay, so nut pate. You can use any kind of nut. I emailed Lauren earlier in the week and said, what kind of nuts do we have in the freezer? So I made it at my house the other day, and I did it with pecans and almonds. And today this is walnuts and pecans. You do what you got. You got a jar of mixed nuts, use a jar of mixed nuts. We did soak these in water overnight. That's just going to give us more of a smooth texture. I made it the other day without soaking it, and it was delicious, just not quite as smooth. So it's personal preference. So there's 2 cups of soaked nuts in here already. And then we're just going to dump everything else right on in. My olive oil's hanging out down here. So we're going to tablespoon or so of olive oil. And the great thing about this is everything in it is fine to eat. So if you get to it, oh, I forgot to get tomato paste. If you, get it all in there and you're like, hey, this is not quite tangy enough, or not quite what I want, not this enough or that enough, you can just keep playing with it. So, tomato paste. I can make the sight lines a little better here. We're going to do 1 clove of minced garlic. These garlic cloves are, depending on which ones you get, are real substantial. So I would go for something, because in the nut pate it's raw, I'd go for something in like that sort of size, unless you really like that spicy garlic flavor. All right. So when I am preparing garlic for something that's going to be raw, I usually like to go a step further than mincing, and I like to just like make it almost into kind of a paste so you don't get big chunks of garlic. And I do that by sprinkling it with a little bit of salt and then just mincing it. And after I've gotten a good mince on it, then I'm going to take my knife, the side of my knife, and I'm going to smash it, right? Almost like it's like a palette knife. And because I've got that salt on there, all of the liquid that's in the garlic is going to succumb. It's going to give itself over, and then you've got more of a garlic paste, right? So that you can kind of scrape it up just like that. And that's going to work really nicely in something where the blender, the food processor, might not get it all entirely. All right, we're going to turn the heat down on this just a little bit. Woo! Come back. Popsicles. Nice. All right, I'm going to go ahead and marry these guys together. And once you're about halfway into your tomato jam cooking, you can throw in your handful, and I'm not doing anything to this basil besides just throw in handfuls in there. Okay, back to nut pate. So I minced that garlic until it's in a tiny smeared up paste. And then we're going to do about a tablespoon of capers. I find sometimes it's tricky to get the capers out without just getting the juice out. You know, your measuring spoon is always bigger than the caper jar. You kind of have to fish them out a little bit. And then you dump all the juice out. You don't have any juice left in your caper. There we go. I feel like I always need a little bit of an assist. Okay, so capers, tomato paste, garlic, and nuts is what we've got so far. And then sherry vinegar. This is where I kind of play around a little bit and might decide to go up or down depending on how it calls for a tablespoon and a half. Do about that. But that's where I might tweak it a little bit if it's not quite where I think it needs to be. Then I'm going to grab almost out of paper towels. Paper towel and dry off my spoon so that my yeast, this is nutritional yeast, this just adds a nice savory sort of middle note, I like to say to things. It's got a lot of umami flavor in it. And then a tablespoon of miso. It still has nutritional yeast on it.
When I was looking for your list of your grocery list, I've never seen miso paste before. Like what section of the grocery store?
Depends on your grocery store. So it's refrigerated. Sometimes it's with the tofu, which is sometimes in the produce section and sometimes not. So it depends on if you're a Kroger shopper or a Publix shopper. They put them in different places, but
That depends on the weekly ad.
right. Sometimes, but it's refrigerated is the trick. So it's not always on that dry produce aisle the dry aisle with the soy sauce. Yeah. I've always seen it in this or in a plastic container, and it usually has like a little, thing to keep it from drying out. It lasts forever and ever in your refrigerator, but you do keep it refrigerated. And it comes in different flavors. This one happens to be mellow white. There's yellow. There's red. The red one tends to be a stronger, more intense flavor, and the yellow and the white ones are more mild. Yeah, and it does have, it's a fermented soybean paste, and it does have some good for your microbiome probiotics in it. The word was escaping me. However, if you heat those up, like if you were to put it in hot soup, you've deactivated them. So you're still going to have a delicious flavor, right? But something like this, you haven't heated it up and killed off which again, there's no reason not to use it in a cooked application. Just know that if that's one of the things you're trying to get out of it, that if you put it in hot soup, you've killed all of the beneficial bacteria that's in there. All right. So, miso, and then we need about 1/4 cup of water. So the amount of water that you put in here might vary. What we're looking for consistency-wise, and it takes a little while to get there, is something that is, in a food processor or a blender, how sometimes it's so thick that the blade will just spin and everything else is sitting there not moving around. We want it to have enough moisture in it that it is moving, right? You don't want it to be thin, you want it to be solid, but you want it moving around, and sometimes that takes a little while. So we're going to turn it on and let it go. We'll see how long it takes. And I do find, so it's already getting to that point, you see, where it's moving a lot less. So it takes a good couple of scrape downs to really get it smooth. And it's moving, but not much, so we're going to keep scraping. And if you do choose, I mean, at some point, and when I made it the other day, I had to add water a couple times. I would start adding water only about a tablespoon at a time, because of course you can add more, but you can't take it away. Or you could add more nuts to it. That would be how you would even that out. We're out of nuts, so. But here we go, there's the water I got. And you can also, you know, start to let it dribble in a little bit. There's a hole in the bottom of this thing. So you can see it dripping in there. And see, it starts to move it a little bit more. It's moving, it's moving. I just add water. We're getting there, we're getting there. All right, see how it's continuously moving, but it's not quite as smooth as where I want to see it. But again, that's personal preference. If you want it chunkier, leave it chunkier. All right. Mm-hmm. For sure. Or you want the, you know, you want the benefit of the nut, the fat, the protein, the fiber. I want it to be a little bit more smooth. So I'm going to add a little bit, another tablespoon or so of water. And we're going to give it some more time. Flavor-wise, it's quite tasty. There we go. See how it's almost like a dough? Keep going, friend. Now, in terms of flavor profile, when I was thinking about nut pate, which I hadn't made in a long time, I went and looked up about 15 different nut pate recipes and then took all the pieces that I liked and put it together and tested it earlier this week. So other things that people sometimes put in recipes that you could play with: coriander, any of your spices like that, cumin, smoked paprika would probably be super tasty. If you want to change the ratios of any of these things, you want it more tomatoey, add tomato paste. You want it more garlicky, do that. You want to throw a roasted red pepper in there. It's really kind of like hummus, right? The basis for a lot of different directions that you can go. So yeah, now we've got, you know, something that looks kind of like chopped liver, which is what pate is. So I'm going to make a little sample one for you, Lauren, and then you can start assembling. And there's a good amount you see in there, so we can, and you can, the other thing you could play around with here is, you know, garnishes if you wanted to serve it in a bowl at a party or something like that, or spread it on toast. I'm going to, you know, give a little red onion on the side that I've marinated in some lemon juice. But you could also, ooh, we've also got some dill sprigs we could add on to that as well. So throw a little dill sprig on there and some red onion. And then we'll switch to popsicles. So you guys tasted the popsicles already. I am now officially advocating that we all start just eating popsicles for breakfast. It's August. I think you should eat popsicles for breakfast. It's just too hot to do anything else. So again, this popsicle, so the popsicle that you ate is strawberry basil. I did, at Chef Mike's idea and suggestion yesterday, I told him I would give him props, added the toasted fennel. And I would say I probably added to this amount of strawberries a half a teaspoon of ground coriander. Fennel. Toasted fennel is what is in the popsicle that you ate. A half a teaspoon of toasted fennel seeds that I ground. I toasted them and then ground them. But you could, well, I ground them. So you could buy fennel, oh, not the bulb, the seed, the spice. Good question. We're going to see in just a minute, but it was probably, again, I made 25 popsicles last night, so I've got to scale down to this amount. I would say, this is another thing, though, where you're going to taste it as you go. So, so that we don't over bruise the basil, I'd say probably 8 to 10 leaves, maybe half a cup, half a loosely packed cup. The popsicle molds, I bought mine on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, IKEA might have them. They might have them at Walmart. I used to have these real cute ones that were like fish shaped, and then that was like a fishbone thing on the inside. If you don't have popsicle molds, paper cups are going to work. That's just fine. Ice cube trays, muffin tins. Those are all options of things that you might have around your house. Or I didn't have any of those things. I didn't even have mason jar, little jelly jar. Now, if you are doing it in a thing that, oh, I'm off camera. If you're doing it in a container that doesn't have a little holder for the top, if you let them freeze for about an hour and then come back, it's thick enough at that point to straighten it out. I set a timer for myself to go straighten this out last night. And I got distracted. And this morning I was like, oh, I have 4 crooked popsicles. They do taste the same. And they still work the same. But if you really want your popsicles to be straight, nut pate, yeah? Yeah, oh yeah, I keep a jar of that in my refrigerator all the time because it just punches up so many things. Onions marinated in citrus, whether it's lime juice, lemon juice, vinegar. And I mean, some of you saw me cut this up. This has not been in lemon juice for that long, but also it'll last for a week in your fridge. Yeah. Yes, there's a little bit of salt, a little sprinkle of salt, and some lemon juice in that red onion. Okay, so to make these popsicles, I need a bowl. Move all of this stuff out of the way. to make these popsicles, oh, I need one more measuring spoon. So you're going to take whatever fruit that you have and you're going to puree it until it's liquefied. You can use frozen fruit, fresh fruit, a combo of fruit, whatever fruit you like. I had this idea that I thought it might be kind of cool to puree the basil in the yogurt so that you had like green looking swirl and a red looking swirl. And you could probably do that. And that would also require you to clean your blender in between. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. Unless you're in a teaching kitchen where they have extra blenders. But even then, you got to wash them all. So I rejected that idea, even though aesthetically, my own aesthetic idea. Okay, so we're going to flip this. Oh, this one's not plugged in. And the Vitamix made real quick work of that. Yes, but if you marinate it, it's good stuff. You get down in there. There we go. All hang out together. All right, so I didn't want to overdo, but like I said, we're going to do about half a cup or so of basil leaves. So yay big. Don't want it to be overwhelmed. And we'll just give this enough to get that basil broken down a little bit, but it doesn't need to be liquefied. Which the Vitamix does in moments. So you can kind of see that in there. And, you know, if you felt like your fruit needed a little nudge and you wanted to sweeten it, you could do that. Garlic on the bottom of the bowl. When it comes to the sweetener, when you're making a popsicle, a liquid sweetener is going to work better. It's going to create a more smooth, less crystallized sort of experience. You could put a granulated sweetener like sugar into the fruit, but into the yogurt, and when you're then freezing it, I find that something liquid works better. So honey is what we've got, but could be maple syrup, could be sorghum syrup, could be agave nectar, could be simple syrup that you made out of sugar. It could be dates, yeah. Date sugar would be delish. You could also start with sweetened yogurt if you wanted to. I personally tend to buy mostly unsweetened yogurt because then I use it in a lot of different applications, savory applications, you know, tacos and whatnot. So yeah, I don't tend to buy sweetened yogurt for that reason. And so I give you a range for the amount of sweetener to use. If you've got a sweetened yogurt, I'd start on the lower end. I think last night, these strawberries are plenty sweet, and I still use kind of the lower end. So I'm going to take 2 cups of the yogurt. I should have. Well, you know, these yogurt things are not easy to peel off. They really need a knife or scissors, or at least just, here we go, something I can poke it with. I got it. There we go.
While I'm up, does anyone want any more of the pate? More pate.
Yeah, go for it. More onions. Okay, I have to give credit to Chef Mike because I brought the pate that I tested into work yesterday, and I was like, it's okay, but it needs something. And it was his suggestion to do the onions. So I told him I would give him credit for all of his ideas. You had a question?
If you wanted to make a smaller batch,
Mm-hmm.
like
Half everything.
will it still spin around the food processor?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, a cup of nuts will still work okay. In a blender, depending on if you have like a super souped up blender like this, that's going to work fine. Sometimes I find with things that if I'm trying to get this texture in a blender, it just requires more liquid to really get it going. Yeah, that's going to be trickier for sure, for sure. Okay, so we are going to get 2 cups of our yogurt. Yeah, any kind of acidic ingredient you want. It could be citrus juice. It could be red wine vinegar. It could be balsamic vinegar. This is 1/3 cup. That's why I'm going. It's usually toasty brownish, but sometimes it's darker and sometimes it's lighter. I don't think I've ever seen it fully clear. I haven't, but I'm sure it would be tasty. Yeah. It is. Yeah, I'd probably start low. Okay, so this is super, super, super simple. I am going to add my sweetener down here. This is what I'm looking for. I'm going to add my sweetener to the yogurt, and I'm really just going to kind of swirl it in. I'm not going to be super precious about making sure it's blended, right? So, and at any point in this process, if you just want to taste it and see how things are going, it's good, right? So I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more, since I got some sticking to the... Oh, if you're doing any baking, do you guys know the trick to make sure you use all of your like fat or oil ingredient? If you've got honey in your recipe, and you're adding oil to something, measure that first in your spoon, because then the honey slides right out. Like all the way out. None left. It's great. Okay, so again, look, I'm just gonna give this a swirl. Mixing it by hand until the honey's kind of blended in. And then you can do this however you want, right? You could, if you want it to be really sort of tie-dyed looking, you could do a little bit of the yogurt and a little bit of this and then mix it in the container. Or what I did last night was dumped it together and just gently mixed it. So some of you guys might have gotten a more tie-dyed mixture looking popsicle, and some of you might have gotten a more homogenized mixture, depending on how far in the batch I had gotten, like how far the bottom of the bowl it was. So I'm just going to sort of gently swirl it around a little bit. And then put it right in your molds. That's it. You've got a popsicle mixture right here. Now you can, taste this to see if it's sweet enough. And for me, that is plenty sweet. And then the popsicle molds like that hold about 1/3 cup or so, 1/3 to 1/2 cup. Excuse me. I have no idea what size measuring cup this is because the label has come off. But it looks like it's about 1/2 cup. If you put them all together in a row, you can tell what they are. So I'm just gonna, right into there. And sometimes it's thick enough that the popsicle stick will sort of stick up on its own. Sometimes you have to let it solidify enough. Of course, the more yogurt that's in the section, so we can see this is probably still ending up being about 1/3 cup in each of these cups, because this is a 1/2 cup measuring cup. Our tomato jam is looking jammy. And you know, when it comes to the sweetener, of course, you could not sweeten it at all if you want. If that's if your fruit is sweet enough, sometimes it feels like it doesn't need. So that made right about 9. Um, 9 little popsicles. See, that one's not going to stand up straight. And they can go right in your freezer. So again, if you want your 6 to stand up straight, come back in an hour or so after they've been in the freezer. But otherwise, 6 to 8 hours until they're solid. I'll put these down here. Thank you. All right. Back to our tomato jam to finish things off. Doesn't it sound like a party? Like we're having a tomato jam. Let's all bring the banjos. Okay. Going to symbol 1 over here. So, ricotta cheese is what I thought would be tasty with this. You guys ever made ricotta cheese before? It's really easy, and I had to save myself from myself last night because I was like, maybe I'll just make the ricotta cheese. And I was like, you still have to make popsicles and you still have several other things to do. Slow down, girlfriend. I could show you how to make ricotta cheese. You take a gallon of milk, of whole milk, and you add some acid. You heat it up to a specific temperature that I cannot quote off the top of my head. And then when it gets to that temperature, you add lemon juice or vinegar, an acid ingredient, and and that acid at that temperature is going to separate the curds in the whey, and that is ricotta cheese. So then you scoop those curds into cheesecloth and drain it as much or as little as you like. So the more you drain it, the firmer it is, and the less you drain it, the more like creamy and loose it is. That's ricotta cheese. Yes, I agree. I agree. I might have been up later than I meant to be up. So I purchased ricotta cheese. I'm using up this basil because we have it. I'm going to give this a taste. And you know, jam is a fun, silly word that we co-opted. These are still kind of whole. But really, it's sauce. That just sounds boring, right? Tomato sauce on toast is not sun gold jam. Sounds vibrant and like enticing, doesn't it? We really know how to zhuzh things up. Although sometimes it's funny working at a hospital, we zhuzh things up a little too much. And so on the patient menu, we really unzhuzh things. I'm always advocating for like, let's just not call it minestrone. Let's call it vegetable soup because not everybody knows what minestrone is. And we want to make sure everybody feels like their food is comfortable and approachable. But I'm also real good at taking it in the other direction and over fancifying things. Okay. Ricotta cheese. And Lauren, if you want to start assembly on toast over here, I'll give you the big one. And I'll take the little one. I'm going to show you. I'm going to do the first one. Let's get a spoon. Forgot to grab all of my tastings. If you did ever want to avoid dairy or serving somebody that was avoiding dairy, we're going to get a generous amount and spread. Just sort of flatten it out a little bit. Oops. Because we're trying, this is a meal here, right? This is a snack slash a large snack, a light meal. Need a bigger plate. I don't know if I've ever seen it in a tube. I have not seen it in substantially smaller amounts. It will last literally years. Years. No. It's fermented, and I mean a lot of things are fermented. You can't keep yogurt in your refrigerator for a year. I wouldn't recommend, at a certain point it's going to get funky. Okay, so then we're just spooning this on. A little bit of garlic and basil in all of them. Some pieces are more cooked down, some pieces are more whole. Right. I would probably, finish with a little pepper, but yeah, then we can start. Yeah. Beautiful. Sure. There's our finished product. Make sure everybody gets a good amount with basil. This is going to get messy. I don't know if you guys need spoons or forks. We can definitely make that happen. Bibs, sure. That's a huge piece. Yep. Just think of it summer produce season. You know how you got peach juice dripping down your arms. This is that kind of experience. There we go. Thank you. Always. There we go, trade. That is a multigrain sourdough from the DeKalb Farmers Market. I do. I mean, it's my neighborhood grocery store. I happen to be right up the street. In fact, my son takes jiu-jitsu literally across the street. So while he's there, I'm often popping in to pick up what I need. Right, yeah. So they've got a couple different kinds. There's a whole grain sourdough, this multi-grain sourdough that's a little more seedy, and plain, yeah, just a more standard San Francisco style sourdough. If you made a big batch like this, it would absolutely freeze just fine. For sure. And then you've got when it's depressingly cold in February and you haven't seen a fresh tomato in a long time, you still have a little taste of summer. Are we gotten okay. Yeah, a grilled cheese would be delish. Yeah, stuff on toast for dinner. I'm a huge advocate. Yep. Okay. In fact, if you even wanted to later put all of this basil, everything all together in your blender and turn it into soup tomorrow, you've got tomato soup.
That's what we call NextOvers.
You're learning, you're learning. You did. And so did I. I taught you something. That's what they pay me for. That's why they didn't have me back. This piece is too big and it's annoying me because it's not. Right, let's say you're out of bread now and you want, right, or it's pasta sauce. Same thing with that nut pate. You want to thin it out as the basis for pasta sauce. You could do that with some stock or something. It's versatile for sure. Some of these pieces I got too rustic with there. There we go. So yeah, you can knife and fork it. You can pick it up like a piece of pizza style. You can a little bit of this, a little bit. You can get it down to a more manageable thing to work on it. So yeah, snacks for dinner. There's a thing on TikTok right now. I don't know if you guys are TikTok observers, but girl dinner. I don't even know how I feel. I know how I feel about that name. I feel very conflicted about that name. I think it's dumb. But the idea of just like, you don't have to make dinner. You can just eat hummus and pickles and cheese and whatever and call it dinner. And that's allowed. We're normalizing, right, this idea that you don't have to get out the pots and pans necessarily to make dinner.
Just a bunch of like little things you want to taste and eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what happens to me sometimes if I haven't planned well is I get home from work. Oh, isn't that so gorgeous? Yeah, doesn't that look like a fancy dinner?
We're having a dinner party.
Right. Pate, pickled onions, the whole thing. It looks like pate. It looks like goose liver, yeah.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.